All right, I'm gonna apologize right now for the wind. It's very windy today. You're just gonna have to deal with it because I have to deal with it. What we have here is a 2012 GMC Yukon. We're doing front brakes on it. Customer provided the brake parts for me, so I didn't have to get those. They're sitting over there. So we're gonna start with getting the vehicle lifted off the ground. We're gonna double check to make sure all the parts look right. That's step number one. And then we'll get right to work on the front brakes. This video is more or less an introduction to Mobile Auto Works YouTube channel. Gonna try to provide DIY solutions for people that want to save money, get their cars fixed, and don't want to pay the expensive cost that shops charge. I am a little bit cheaper. Obviously, it's cheaper if you do it yourself. So we're here to show you guys how all this stuff goes down and the kind of services we provide and the kind of quality that we expect from ourselves. You always want to protect the customer's floor. So I like to set the jack on a little piece of wood in case I'm on blacktop like this. That way it doesn't sink into the blacktop. All right, first things first, let's take the wheel off. It's going to be a 22 millimeter. This lug nut's quite swollen. You can stick it on there, loosen it like this, remove it, and then continue to take it off so it doesn't get stuck in the socket here. That's my little trick for that. I like to set the wheel under the car just in case something were to happen or this jack fails. It won't fall all the way on the ground and hurt somebody. So this is something that I wanted to show people. On these types of rotors, there's a bolt here that holds the rotor to the hub. A lot of times this can be, in this case it's a Torx bit, it can be Honda uses Phillips heads, sometimes GM likes to use hex heads or Allen heads. There's a tool for this called an impact driver, and it's designed to knock these loose and break them out of there after they've been rusted in place for however many miles the vehicle has. I've never found a great way to use that tool without breaking bits on a regular basis. It's just a tool you hit with a hammer and it'll crack it loose, but a lot of times the bits that you use are constantly getting broken. So you either have to have quite a few bits on hand in case one breaks so you can keep doing your job, or you have to, you know, wait for the tool guy to come and warranty out your bit so that you can reuse it again the next job. What I found that works the best for me is that once you take this caliper off and get your pads out of here, if you hit this rotor 2-3 times really hard on the opposing side of where this bolt is, what it'll do is create enough inertia and movement to actually pull the bolt away from where it's at, just enough so that it loosens up and comes out really easy. So what I like to do is hit it really hard with a hammer a few times here, and then grab my little impact gun with a bit and zip that off, and 9 out of 10 times it'll come out of there and have no issue coming out and be able to go right back in where it was before. The other tool, sometimes it'll strip this out, I've had to use an air hammer on these to get them out in the past. Before I knew this trick, I've had to use a drill to drill out that hole. Sometimes when people do that, they don't realize the stud is still in there, and they'll put the rotor on like a little bit off of where it's supposed to be, and that little stud will actually cause this rotor to sit on here crooked, and that'll cause a crazy pulsation when you're braking. And I've had it numerous times where people come in, say, I just got my brakes done, it's pulsating like crazy, and I go in there, take everything apart, and find that the previous technician had just put the rotor on the wrong way because they weren't paying attention to what they were doing. So that is one of my #1 favorite tips to share with technicians that I come across, because most of them, or pretty much all of them, have never seen my method of getting these annoying bolts out of here without having to fight with them. Customer requested these brake pads and rotors get changed out. I like to look at them to see if they need them. He said that they were making noise. They just bought the vehicle recently. He just wants to get them done, so we're gonna go ahead and do them anyway. But I do like to be honest and take a look at the brake pads, even when a customer recommends that I replace them, just so I make sure that they're not wasting their money. If these were brand new, I would simply have to tell them that, hey, you know, these look great. It's up to you if you'd like me to continue to replace them, but you don't necessarily need them. And just be honest with people and take care of them, and they will take care of you. So without further ado, we're going to get right into this brake job. We're going to start by removing this 19mm bolt here. What I like to do is remove just the lower bolt. A lot of times you can just swing this caliper up. Just swing it up like this and slide it out. That gives you a good look at the slide pin here. You can lube it up really fast, and it's just one less bolt that you have to take out to be efficient. These pads do look like they got a lot of life left in them. As you can see, they are wearing unevenly though. You can see the thickness of this pad right here is about half the thickness of this pad. A couple things can cause this. Typically, the way this caliper works is these pistons press outward onto the brake pad, and then it actually pulls this part of the caliper into this pad so that it squeezes them together. With these pistons moving first, they touch this pad first and actually initiate the braking sequence first. So this pad always touches the rotor first before this one does, and that sometimes can cause a little bit of uneven wear. This hardware seems to move freely. That's the other thing that can cause this, if the hardware rusts up. And you can see some rust here. If it gets too rusty, it'll actually swell and lock the pad in place. So what'll happen is the brake pads will squeeze and they won't release all the way. So they always ride on the rotor just a touch because they're not moving freely, and that'll wear down the pad faster on this side too. I like to compress these calipers first and foremost just to see if they compress. If they don't, typically you have to replace the caliper. These ones seem to be going in just fine. I like to start here because calipers change the price of a brake job by quite a lot, and it's better to know early on in the process that you may need calipers versus getting all the rotors and pads in place and then compressing this and finding out, oh, it doesn't move, now I have to go get calipers and the brake job is halfway completed. It's just nice and efficient to do it all in a sequence that you can remember and that works for you. I don't claim to be the best mechanic in the world. My process that I use works. I've been doing this for a long time, and your process may work for you, and there's nothing wrong with that. Here's an example. The slide pin here is frozen. This vehicle may need calipers after all because this slide pin is frozen. This one came right out nice and lubricated. This one is just stuck here. So that would explain why this pad was wearing down so fast because the caliper wasn't allowed to slide back and forth properly. I'm going to try to see if I can save them some money. Sometimes what you can do is apply some heat in this area here, and that will actually expand the metal, and you can work this slide pin out and get it out of there, clean it up, re-lubricate it, put it back in, and make sure it moves smoothly in there, and that actually can save the customer several hundreds of dollars. When you replace calipers, they're expensive. It also requires an additional service because you have to do a brake flush to get the fluid into the caliper and bleed all the air out of the caliper. So in this situation, I'm going to see if a little bit of heat will work, and hopefully we can get this slide pin out and finish this brake job pretty quickly here. So what I like to do here is come back behind here as I'm working this slide pin and push outward. And as you do that, the slide pin will start to work its way out of there. Just take your time. As long as it's spinning, it'll come out. Sometimes you got to give it a little, show it a little love. We're going to give it some more heat. I always like to keep the heat moving. You want to try not to burn the boot that keeps the lubricant inside here. So if you keep it moving, the fire doesn't stay in one spot too long. Now what I'm going to do here is be careful because this may be hot. I'm going to pinch it in the vice grip here and take my little air grinder and get all the rust off of there. Now what we do is we add a little lubricant only on one side of the slide pin. The reason that is because if you do it all the way around, it'll almost hydro lock this pin and it'll push in and want to push itself back out. So I only run one half of it, stick it in, and twist it. And just like that, we saved a caliper. Now the next step here, that we've figured that solution out for the caliper, we're gonna remove the caliper bracket here. It should be an 18 millimeter. Yep. What I like to do is try to crack them loose with my wrenches. And then finish removing the bolts with my impact gun here. Now, for that trick I was telling you about, I'm going to position the bolt that I'm trying to remove on the opposite side of where I want to hit. Just grab a large hammer, give it a couple good whacks. Comes right out. As you can see, there's no damage to this bolt. We're going to take the new rotors, we're going to compare them to the old ones to make sure they're correct. These rotors come with an oil film on them to keep them from rusting in the package. So you're going to want to go ahead and use some brake clean or some kind of degreaser to clean up the rotors. Get this oil off here before you put the pads in. Here's how I do this. Simply set them up next to each other. Make sure they're the right height. Make sure the hat looks correct. And these look like they're the right ones. I like to start with sticking the rotor on backwards like this. Spray it down, clean it, touch it on the outsides, flip it around, and then clean up the front side of it. What I use here is isopropyl alcohol. I can refill this and put air in this and it'll squirt out. So it's reusable. It costs a lot less than brake clean, and you're not throwing away all those brake clean cans all the time. So this is a really good tool. I think it's called a Sure Shot. You can see it just says vapor sprayer. You can get these on Amazon. You can get them at parts stores and stuff like that. They're a little bit expensive. If I remember right, this was like $70, but when you think about how much you spend on brake clean, it pays for itself very quickly. So give it a little shot. Looks pretty clean. Now, like I said, grab it on the outside, flip it around, line up the holes for the little bolt. I'm going to reinstall this bolt here to hold the rotor in. I always like to give it a little tap over here just to make sure it seats properly. And now we continue with cleaning the rotor. Now that we've got the rotor clean, we're going to reinstall the caliper bracket here. I always like to go back through and hand tighten everything just to make sure I don't put too much faith in my impact gun here, which may be low on battery, may not be, we're not sure. So we're gonna go ahead and tighten this and make sure it's tight. On caliper brackets, there is a torque spec. A lot of times you want to get them pretty tight. Not too tight as to damage the bolt or strip it out or anything, but you really want to make sure it doesn't come off of here. Now we're going to prep the brake pads. When I do this, I'm very careful not to touch this side of the brake pad. This is the side that touches the rotor and stops the vehicle. You don't want any oil on this, similar to how the oil was on the rotor and we had to take it off. You don't want oil on either one of these faces. It will contaminate it. It will cause brake squeaking. It can cause too much excessive heat, and it can warp rotors and things like that. So you want to make sure you're very careful to keep these surfaces clean when you're working. I like to set all the brake pads out for me. Take a close look and identify which pad is which. These pads are pretty nice. They actually tell you right here. This one says it's the outer pad. This one here says it's a left inner pad, so obviously that will be the right inner pad. So there's a little controversy here on the proper way to lubricate brake parts. It's said that you want to take the hardware out and actually lubricate underneath the hardware. That will actually absorb the vibrations, which is what makes the squeaking noise. It's actually a vibration. Friction vibration there. That will help absorb it. And other people like me, we just lubricate the outside of the brake pad. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm not going to say either way is right or wrong. This is the way I do it. You can do it the way you like. But when I apply this lubricant, I don't apply a ton. It only needs to be a little lubricated in these areas here. So very quickly, we're just going to lubricate these areas. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is, just like we matched up the rotors, I already did this off camera, but you'll want to match up the brake pads too, just to make sure you're putting the right ones in there. So what I like to do with that is just take one of the old brake pads and lay it over the top and make sure that it's the same length, same width, same shape, and these ones are correct. The next step I do here is I run disc brake quiet on the back side of the pad. Now, you don't have to do this, although I find that it helps absorb vibrations, and it can get messy, so you have to be careful. I like to spray directly on the back, not too much. I don't want a whole bunch of overspray, so shake it up, give it a couple sprays. Give it a couple direct sprays on the top, and that way it stays where you want it and it doesn't contaminate the brake pads. All right, now that we've let the disc brake quiet set, it's sticky now, so it's ready to go onto the vehicle. So we'll start with the left hand side inner pad, and we'll just slide this right in there like that. And this outer pad goes like this. I'm not replacing the hardware on this, as you can see. The reason why is because the OEM manufactured hardware tends to be held to a much higher standard. It can last the life of the vehicle. If I don't see anything wrong with it, if the stainless steel here looks fine, everything is functioning the way it's supposed to, and the pads slip in nice and easy, I try to reuse OEM hardware. I've had a lot of issues with aftermarket hardware and their quality control. I'll give you an example. This set comes with multiple different options of hardware for multiple different vehicles. I don't know what's happened in the last 10 years, but the quality control on this kind of stuff, it isn't like it used to be. These people a lot of times will throw the hardware in there. You'll get duplicates of one side. You may not have the correct one for the other side. A lot of times these tabs aren't wide enough, so they don't snap into place. They create grinding noises because the hardware is stamped out of cheaper metal than what was used from the manufacturer. So it's up to you. A lot of people do replace hardware every single brake job. They do run into these issues, like I just said, but they tend to find a way to fix it, order a new set of hardware, or you know, you can manipulate it and grind some little areas down. But I don't think you should have to do that kind of thing to make new parts work. They should work. And if I have enough issues with the hardware not working, then I tend to just stop using aftermarket hardware. Now this slide pin, I'm going to add a little more lubricant there, not much. Again, only on the one side. And I'm going to slip it in there and fold this down. I'm going to reinstall this caliper bolt here. And once again, we're going to hand tighten that to make sure it's tight. This ratchet is a little excessive. It's very long, so I'm not going to pull up on it too hard, just enough to make sure it's tight. We're going to reinstall the wheel now. You always want to start these by hand. A couple threads, make sure they go on smooth. When you tighten them down, I use an impact gun lightly. I start on one. I like to, as I tighten this, I like to shake the tire at the top here. The reason that is because if there's any rust or something, as I tighten it, it'll wiggle its way to the hub surface and mate the way it's supposed to. Now I'll come back by here and I'll torque these wheels down. These wheels get torqued to 140 foot-pounds. On wheels, absolutely always must torque them by hand every time, just to make sure that the wheel has been torqued and it's going to stay on the vehicle. Last thing you want is a customer's tire falling off the vehicle while they're driving right after you just fix their brakes. I also like to give a nice little shake to see if there's any other loose parts up in the front. Sometimes you can feel a tie rod and you can address that with the customer at the same time as doing the brakes. So as we make our way over to the other side here, it's the same exact method as the first one. It's just the same process. We're gonna do it super quick on this one. And just like that, we're cleaned up and ready to get out of here. Another happy customer. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe, like, comment, share. Any of that stuff helps us. We're going to try to put out more content like this to show you guys how this stuff works and how to get your cars fixed. And I hope to see you on the next one.